So obviously my first question is, how are things with y'all? So I want to know how the online class is going for you and just what's your overall feel for the course right now.
I like it. It's very organized, easy to
Mm-hmm.
follow.
Yeah, it's true. Very self-explanatory with the syllabus. It's not confusing.
Okay. No challenges. Don't feel afraid. Now you can tell me.
Okay, well, Dr. Harris, for
Hey,
this is Phelan, I kind of have some concerns.
Okay, I got my pen and my pad. You can't see me, but I do have a tablet here to take notes.
Okay, well, my only concern is, I mean, the class, like they said, like the order, I mean, everything is self-explanatory. It's just, I don't know if I'm missing like what you're expecting in some assignments, or I don't know, but I just feel like I don't know, like my grades are not what I think they should be.
Okay,
you know what I mean?
You're talking about on the discussion forum?
Yes, maybe I'm not adding enough detail.
So I will actually, that is something that we were going to talk about, but since Phelan brought it up, I'm going to go ahead and switch my screen and share it with you guys so that you can see where the rubric is for the online discussion. So this is my view, and you guys can see my screen now?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, so if you go under course resources here, there is an online discussion rubric that is a PDF form. And it's very simple, but in our first online discussion, I think in the feedback that I gave everyone, I also said, make sure you check out the discussion rubric that is available so you can see kind of what I'm looking for in the future assignments. And this is key. So perfect grade, which would be 15 points for your original discussion and for your original response, and 5 points for your 2 responses to your peer. So each response to your peer maybe be around 2.5 points, right? But in order to get the full 20 out of 20, I'm looking for something that is like thought-provoking. And so people who get 20s out of 20s on our discussion forums are individuals who are really taking the discussion prompt to a completely different level, completely provocative. They're adding in their own life experiences, tying it back maybe to some concepts from the textbook, using those parenthetical citations, right? For example, saying, oh, this is what the author talks about on page 7. I can see it here. And also when they engage in responses with their classmates, they're also doing the same thing, right? So a classmate might say, oh, I felt this way, and you are engaging in that and taking it a step further so that it's really a very robust and rich discussion. And right underneath that, you have substantial, where you get between a 12 to 14 and 4 points for something that is doing above and beyond, but kind of doesn't really go any step further. And then there's the superficial level, which will get you around a C. So if you see the breakdown, this is like A territory, A, B territory. This here is like around C, and then just incorrect is like meh. So superficial is going to be, okay, you did the assignment, right? You're in there, you made it by the deadline, you answered the questions. Particularly, for example, if I say, oh, consider the following questions, and you do something like copy and paste the questions and only do like a 1 to 2 sentence response for each point, and then you just submit it, right? Something like that is just going to be around an average grade, so around a C. And the reason why I make it that way, I know it's challenging, but the reason why I make it that way is because in an online class, our discussion forums are the equivalent of our classroom discussions. And so if you were in a classroom and your contribution was only, I agree, well, that wouldn't be that much fun. Like, that wouldn't go anywhere. And what happens in the classroom environment is that we typically have that kind of provocative learning conversation where we're going back and forth with each other, we're engaging, we're following it back up. And so that's the best I can do to try to create that. Where we mimic that is to encourage you to have that good conversation with one another. Does that help at all, Phelan?
Yes, ma'am, it does.
Like he hung up. He was
No, it does.
Okay, so look at the syllabus, and if ever you guys get like some points and maybe you're like, I thought I was being provocative and she only gave me a 17. Because typically when I'm giving feedback, I try to like write in the comments something that will bring to my mind, or I can look at your thread and see where maybe I dinged a point or something like that. And sometimes it's a matter of, you might give one classmate a really provocative response, and then you'll go to the second one and you're like, good point. And that's it. And so that knocks, kind of your grade down to a few points, whereas everything else might have been excellent, right? But looking for full participation.
And you're still working on the discussion too?
The grades for discussion too? Yes, I am still, I think I only have like maybe a handful left to grade, but
okay. Yeah, I don't have one.
It was more important for me to hurry up and give you all feedback on your potential client pitches.
Right.
So I actually jumped ahead and went through and read everyone's potential clients and gave feedback on that before I finished the discussion prompt, because we are about to get into talking about our final assignment, and I wanted to, we need to get the ball rolling on that. So discussion 2 will be.
Speaking of.
Yes, who's that?
Me, Terry.
Oh,
Jasmine.
Jasmine's on the phone, I guess. Yes.
I printed out the brief. And I was wondering how many pages we're expecting our final to be, the creative brief assignment. Like, is there like a specific amount?
Okay, Jasmine, was that your question?
No, I was going to ask if we were breaking up the pieces of the creative brief throughout the rest of the semester, or was it just collectively submitted at the end?
Okay, so good. You guys were segueing right on into it. I will share my screen again, and let's bring up that final assignment. So here we go. It appeared over the past week. So when you go to Creative Brief in Blackboard, my connection is unstable. Oh, the tragedy. Okay, you see here it has a very small kind of overview, but there's a PDF document there. That's the complete assignment. So this is for the entire assignment. And to answer Jasmine's question, we will work on this in bits and pieces throughout the semester. But I will, because of that, for those like Phelan who took me in an upper level course before, like research, because we worked on it throughout the semester, that means when you turn in your final assignment, my expectations will be really high, right? That it will be polished, that we are really going to have some great depth, because you're going to incorporate my feedback. So for example, people who didn't turn in the the potential client list, well, they missed the opportunity to get some good feedback, right? So they're just kind of on their own for that step, figuring out what they want as we roll into the next assignment. And I believe the next assignment is going to be for you to do either, I forget the order, but we also have a concept brainstorm assignment where you will do a failing fast activity where you're just putting out together a bunch of creative ideas. And another one is that you're going to do an ethnography or interview research assignment. So you will be able to actually go out and write up some original research and send that back to me, and I'll give you some feedback on that. And all of that will come together as a part of this final creative brief. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
I have a question for the on my feedback. You had said choose probably a smaller company versus one of the bigger ones, and so I think my smallest one was like 2 states. What if I end up choosing something else that's not on the potential list? Is that okay?
Yes, that's fine. Okay. So the biggest thing with all of you guys, and I gave this feedback consistently, is thinking about your potential client. So there was some confusion about what I meant by client. And when we use client in advertisement, we mean the company or the group of people or the brand that you're working on behalf of. So a client doesn't necessarily mean one person. A client could be, Nike, or your client could be Shipley's Donuts, right? Because you're doing your service on behalf of that that product, brand, or service. And oftentimes advertising is outsourced. So you're going into the client and you're doing all this stuff for them. Now, I gave the option for you to do an actual client, which is someone who would be local, that you can actually get into contact with and use some of the strategies that you're learning in the textbook. Ask them what they're interested in, ask them about their current consumer base, and really get that hands-on experience, right? But then also I gave the option for a hypothetical client. Those are a little bit more challenging. And that's what I said to many of you. If you are pitching an international or global brand such as Nike, that will be really difficult for you to do in a class such as this, because Nike has such a strong brand identity already, and they've done literally almost everything in the book. So your problem or your challenge then will be to figure out what haven't they done. And that means you need to really do your own research. You need to familiarize yourself with that global or national brand. You need to look at previous advertising campaigns. You need to think about a target market that they're not currently exploring and try to figure out a way to take it in a new direction. So that will be just a little bit more challenging, or different, rather, I guess I could say different, than working with someone where you're just doing the molding on your own.
Okay, so if you choose,
and I have a question.
That already has an established, campaigns and everything, the one that you choose has to be unique. Like if you did Nike, you'd have to come up with something completely new. You couldn't.
Yeah, so you couldn't do Nike and say, oh, I'm going to pitch for this Nike shoe and I'm going to bring in a star athlete for the commercial.
They've already done that.
Because they've done that. And so that's where it gets challenging, because thinking about Nike as a brand, what haven't they done? They've brought in celebrities. They've brought in regular people. They've done, humor. They've done serious. They've done live action shots. And so when you're trying to justify, oh, I'm going to pitch something to you, what can you pitch to a brand like Nike?
I just want to clarify that for the recording for other people so they don't go and.
Yeah, great. Yeah, that's actually good. And another thing that I did say to some people who had that global or national brand is that it can make it more manageable if you select one specific product or service, right? So instead of saying, oh, I want to do Nike as a brand, maybe you say, I want to advertise Nike's running app. Right. And so using something very specific that we may not have seen a lot of campaigns for will also make that a little bit more manageable. And this will also make it easier for you to think about how are you going to measure your outcomes. Jasmine, you had a question?
Yeah, just on the feedback that you gave me, you liked the I Write idea for the literacy organization. And I kept it local because I intend on selling mine to one of these local, actually one in particular I was hoping that you would pick, but I was just trying to see, because I definitely would like to pitch this to one of the local, because a lot of them are just starting out within the past 2 years, the one that most of them on the list that I did. So I was just trying to see if that would be, what do you think about that?
My goal for you guys with this class, and probably in the future, I would like to even make advertising a service learning class where we have to stay local and really go out there and do campaigns for clients.
That would be very cool.
Something for your portfolio. So I assume everyone is getting ready to graduate soon, but this can be a really great takeaway once you get it polished, and we're about to go through the assignment in a moment. But once you get it polished and really pull it all together, have it in your portfolio to be able to say, you know what, I was able to pick a client, pick a product, brand, or service, research the market, come up with some goals, and work through the process of coming up with a creative strategy. And that's really a marketable skill, and it brings together everything you learned in your current curriculum. So let me just go through this really quickly. I'm trying to look at everyone here because it's only showing me 4 people at a time. So someone asked about a page limit. And you'll probably be frustrated by this as well, don't really like to give page limits. And the reason why is because I am quality over quantity. And I also don't like the panic that comes along with, oh, this has to be 8 pages. And so I'm going to double space everything and add in 16 sentences that don't even go. And what can I throw in? And I'm going to make all my graphics half a page or something like that. I don't want you to do that, right? I want you to focus on putting together a really great pitch and doing what you need to do in order to get the job done. And so I grade based on the fact of, did you do what I'm asking you to do? And this is very detailed. So of course, this would be maybe anywhere from 6 to 10 pages, just an ideal range, right? Because it's not a simple assignment. And also depending on your formatting and how you do your headers and things like that, because this should look more like a professional document as opposed to a scholarly document, right? And I will do my best to try to get some examples for you all to look at and post on Blackboard as we get closer to the final product. But that's how I feel about page limits. But you should have, of course, a front cover, an executive summary. It tends to be a few paragraphs where you really hone in on the problem, the challenge, and what you know about the brand and the direction that you're taking it into. Think about this as like a research abstract. Whenever you pick up a research paper, they have that abstract in the beginning. It's very similar, but more of a professional tone. Then I want to know your challenge and your objective, and we'll get to all of this in your text. How are you going to be able to write very clear, measurable outcomes? And so some of my feedback to a lot of you were, how are you going to measure this? Oh, I want people, to just try out this new product or feel good about life, right? Like you can't measure if someone feels good about life. Like you have to take it into a really clear goal. And so that's going to be a challenge. The example I gave here.
I have a question.
Who is this? Yes.
Oh, sorry. So as far as like measurements, would that be more of like numbers, like
yes,
hits on your social media page, or this many people will buy your product based on, you know what I mean? Like it'll be more like a numbers thing, right?
Absolutely. It should be something that's measured. And this is something that is different than public relations. And a lot of you were pitching kind of more to the PR end, but advertising, and this is something that will be on your test and it's something that is in your textbook, is a business, right? It is absolutely a business. And the end goal is to sell. PR wants you to feel good and wants you to love us, but advertising wants you to move dollars and move units. And if you can't show how you were able to do that for the client, chances are you will get fired, right? When they're measuring your success, they're not like, oh, this is the best graphic I've ever seen. It's asking how many people looked at that graphic and then made a decision to purchase. And so that's that is how they measure if you are successful as an agency or not, or if your campaign is working. If your goal was to get 25,000 page views by the end of December, that's something that you can say, I started this promo on November the 1st, and by December, we had this many page views, right? The call to action said, click on this link to go to Facebook, and this is how many people clicked on this link. And so you can measure it, and it's very clear, and you can see that whatever it is that you're doing worked, right? So we'll talk some more about that. Target audience, you've learned a little bit about your audience in the previous chapters on evolving audiences. We'll talk a little bit more about it. It'll all continue to go through the chapters in the text, but really having a clear understanding of who it is that you're trying to market to, and also a justification when you are pitching a creative strategy. How does that appeal to this particular demographic, right? So being able to say, my target audience is the working woman on the go between the ages of 25 and 35 who enjoys health and fitness. And then you have your product and you say, well, one feature of my product is that it is low calorie, right? And so it's low calorie and it's small enough to fit in a purse. That's a benefit specifically tying back to your target market. And so that's the kind of connections I'll be looking for. An explanation of features and benefits. This goes back to knowing your product or your brand or service inside and out. So you should be able to clearly articulate and say, this has this, and this is why the target market is going to want to buy it. So if you have like technology, oh, this laptop does this, and this, my target market is college students, and they're going to like it because it turns into a tablet, it has a stylo, it's affordable, and it's break resistant, right? This is why they need this in their life. your strategic message really answers the question of what's in it for me. It's a very simple, straightforward sentence, right? So I'm trying to think of one off the top of my head. It's not it's not really working right now. But I'll try to continue to send out examples of stuff as we go forward throughout the class. How many of you looked at the David Bridles campaign that I sent out this week? Did you guys look at it?
I haven't seen it yet.
Okay, so it's in.
Yeah, I haven't seen it.
It's in the open forum, so I'll try to do more, like send things out like that so you can really see how these campaigns come together. And then finally, of course, tone, your creative strategy is actually what you plan to do, right? So are you going to do a social media campaign? Are you going to do an out-of-the-box billboard campaign? Are you going to produce a commercial? If you're going to do a commercial, what's the scenario? What do you need to make these things happen? So this should be as detailed as possible so I can get a really clear vision of how this strategy is going to come to life. And then, of course, any references that you use for research, for market research, for previous campaigns or anything like that is going to be included in your reference page in APA format. Now, lastly,
So Dr. Harris.
yes.
Okay, so pretty much as far as with the creative brief, what you laid out, it's pretty much just a skeletal approach for us just to really look at the each section and get that actual content. And then as we get closer to having it turn to the end, that's when you'll give us like how you want it formatted, as far as if you want certain graphics or certain like how you want it pretty much framed. That's pretty much will come closer to the end, correct?
So this is the final assignment, and I always like to introduce the final instructions very early on so that you all know what you're getting into. Like, I don't want you to be, April 1st and all of a sudden it's like, I got a 10-page, whatever, do. So but we're going to walk through this, but I just want to make you all aware that this is here, everything that I'm going to be looking at when I grade it, including the rubric down here at the bottom, to see how you can get an A, B, C, the grade breakdown and everything. So yeah, we're going to walk through it, and I won't just like throw and just like, this won't be our last conversation about it, basically. And then the last section here is that you get the opportunity to select one. And so for me, I really like this assignment for this class because a lot of you have never taken advertising, and because we're not a mass communication program, we're a comm studies program, it'll probably be your only ad class, and it's impossible to learn everything we need to learn about advertising in one 15-week course. It's absolutely impossible. Because as you've learned so far, there are so many components, from creative to account planning to writing. So this gives you an option. If you want to do a multimedia component, you can do that. It should be savvy. If it's a slideshow, it should be a really good slideshow with really good graphics. That this would be comparable to what you would actually use. Like Jasmine wants to pitch a client. If that client invited you in so that you could speak to the executive board and show them your idea, this is what I would like to see, right? What you would actually bring into that room to show them your idea. Now, however, maybe that's not your thing.
Thinking about doing the storyboard.
That would be fun and creative, right? With storyboards go a long way, and being able to articulate your vision. And if you guys don't know what a storyboard is, I'm going to write down here on my notepad to find some resources, and I'll share those with you as well. But maybe that's not your thing, and maybe you are a writer and you can write very well and you got the persuasive rhetoric down pat. Okay, maybe you might want to go with the sample copy approach. Now, this only works if you are doing a campaign that depends on copy, right? So, for example, if you've ever seen an advertorial, do you guys know what that is? I'm going to actually stop sharing and go back to the gallery because it's weird. Do you guys know what advertorial is? It's kind of looks like a news story, but it's not. Okay, I'll write that down too. So for example, Because that's the latest trend in advertising, because newspapers can't really fill out their space. They'll sell some of their space for an advertorial, and it's basically written by a very good copywriter, and it's a story, but it's all in support of one brand, right? One brand, product, or service. And so you might see in the technology section of the Wall Street Journal that Samsung has written a story about their latest phone, and it's a full story. But every single sentence in that story has the motivation of getting you to purchase that phone, right? And so, or if you're flipping through a magazine sometimes and you read something, you're like, oh, this is really compelling, and it's an advertisement. It's like 2 or 3 paragraphs, and then you turn the page and it's like a pharmaceutical drug or whatever the case may be. That is written advertising copy. And so if you want to do something like that and you prefer to do writing over the visual or the creative end, then by all means, you can write a story. You can tell a very compelling story in your copy, and you can turn that in as your supplement as well. So we're going to keep coming back to this. This will not be the only time that we talk about it, but we should be getting the ball rolling. So I hope you guys are thinking about that. Any questions about that assignment?
Yes. So the multimedia or the sample copy, those are just supplements, right? To what we're turning in the actual brief?
Yes, but you have to do one or the other.
Okay.
So it says and something else, it's either or.
Okay. And for the creative brief, it's not just a product, right? It's a product or a service or...
So if you were, for example, I just got my hair did, right? That's a service, but I pay for it, right? And my hairstylist, she's selling her services. So if you are doing something like that, I want to advertise this manicure or a haircut or something like that, that's a service that definitely needs advertising because it can be purchased. So anything that can be purchased, we have to think about it in terms of what can be purchased. Because again, some of you are leaning more toward the PR standpoint, but in advertising, it has to be about dollars and cents. And even if you're picking a person, what your campaign should be, for example, if I was, advertising Chris Brown, my call to action still needs to be send an email to book him today, right? I want you to spend your money on Chris Brown. It's not like, oh, here, love Chris Brown, listen to his music. No, I need money. Buy his song on iTunes, right? Come and get the ticket for his concert. There has to be a call to action that involves a transaction that includes money. So it doesn't have to just be a product. It can be anything that can be bought and sold. Any more questions? No?
I think that really helps to say, not the PR standpoint. I have to remember that.
It's tricky, and I think we have maybe one other PR class, and when I think next week or this week we'll be talking about integrated marketing communications, the IMC model in your text, and there is absolutely a lot of overlap between advertising and public relations, but the key difference is advertising is talking about dollars and cents. They can always work together. They can work in tandem. You might see a campaign that brings in like Wells Fargo. Someone wanted to do Wells Fargo, and they were like, "Oh, I want to do an advertisement for Wells Fargo because they've been going through a lot of things." And those are PR spots, right? When you've been seeing that little horse coming around Wells Fargo talking about put your trust in us. No, they're just trying to get you back in their hearts, right? They're just trying to build that rapport back up. They're not telling you to come in and open a new bank account. There's going to be a call to action in a true advertisement, which is very closely related, but it is different than public relations. I do love PR, but we just don't have time for it. Any questions?
I want to know about the test.
Okay, so the exam opens tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. It'll be open until 11:59 p.m. on Sunday. You're going to go into your current week folder where you go every week for all of your assignments, and it'll appear there. It'll be 25 questions, multiple choice, true, false, and you'll have 50 minutes. Yes, wait. No, I think you'll have 25 minutes. I lied. 30 minutes. Sorry. I'm sorry. 30 minutes. Final answer. Worth 50 points.
Okay, 30 minutes.
50 points, and it's 30 minutes, which gives you like a minute and a few seconds per question, which is a whole lot of time. If you know the answer, it's a whole lot of time. I will tell you 2 things to think about when taking your exams. Remember, I dropped the lowest score because I know people taking online exams that are timed and all kind of things happen. So the lowest one will be dropped and it won't be averaged into your grade. And secondly, you have 30 minutes, which if you know your stuff, it really is a lot of time. So thinking about reading a multiple choice question and you're like, oh, C, oh, B, right? Use the entire time. Use the entire time. Some people like go through and then they get those last 10 questions that they don't know and they're just like, oh, I'm going to submit, but you might have 10 minutes left. Use your time to think through and really do what you need to do to be successful, right? So it's timed, but it's ample enough time if you know the material.
Is it kind of, I mean, I don't, there's not really vocabulary in there, like, you know, glossary, but
No.
Is it kind of vocabulary or graphics?
No, it's more conceptual, right? So one of the things that I said, for example, that I know will be on the test, and you guys are here, so you get bonus points, is that advertising is a business, right? And so the question will say, you know, this one rule or something like that will always be true about advertising. And you'll see the options, and the rest of them are just false. So the rest of them are just not true, but advertising as a business is something that you should have taken away from the readings in the course thus far. It'll cover chapters 1, which is really like a crash course for advertising, chapter 3, which is talking about ethics. And so it's really assessing, do you understand the importance of this stuff on a conceptual level? But then there might be, I think there's some just very few numbers, like can you remember the percentage of women who work in advertising or something along that lines that is also in your text. What else? Some true false ones, which are really easy. So chapters 1, 3, 4, and 5. So global audiences, I got the text right here. The global audiences, and then, evolving audiences, and then international audiences. So really diversity in advertising, and then appealing to global markets. So it should be pretty easy. I think it's pretty easy, but okay. I don't know. I wrote it. Any other questions?
That covers everything so far.
What happened?
I think that covers everything so far.
I think it does too.
Same here.
Yeah.
Do you, will the test allow you to make changes as you're making it, or will it only accept the answer?
So good question. You should be able to, my bar won't here. You should be able to go back and make changes. I do it all at one time so you can see the whole thing. The test is timed. I don't do force time. And so, I mean, I do force time, but there's an option where you click and it says it must be completed in one setting. But I don't click that because it makes things very difficult if anything happens, right? But know that once you start it, the timer will keep going. Even if you have to log back out and log back in really quick or something like that, your timer will keep going. So my suggestion is to not start the quiz, it's kind of like a quiz, but not to start the exam until you're absolutely ready to sit down and do the exam. Also, another thing that I will tell you is that I've heard that taking the test on mobile sometimes doesn't save the options or the answers. People have issues with that. So if you're using Blackboard Mobile, maybe try to get to a desktop over the weekend and just take those 30 minutes to do the quiz or the test on the on Blackboard. And there was one other thing. Don't start until you're ready. Oh, if you have any problems, any technical issues with Blackboard, I'm going to put the information for you to contact student support services, because some of that stuff ain't nothing I can do about it, right? So contact student support services, and once they're working on something, they should send something to me, or you can just reach out to me and let me know that you've been in touch with them, and then we can work from there.
Thank you.
Any more? Louis, did you have a question?
It was the exact same question Ms. Mosley had.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else, you guys? We're at 6:37. No, okay. Well, thank you guys for coming. I'm glad we had good participation. I'm going to, once this video is finished rendering or whatever, I'll put it up on Blackboard for everyone to see. And if you guys have any questions about anything, feel free to reach out. I'm going to follow up with the storyboard and the advertorials probably in the next week or so, and we can take it from there. Cool?
Yep.
All right. Well, have a good day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye.